Uh, all right. Hey there, folks. Even though convention signings and other live events are back on track, I figured I'd keep bringing book tour to you. So, welcome to Russ's Rockin' Rollercoaster, intriguing interviews with creative minds. It's been a minute since we did a one-on-one interview on the show, so please welcome tonight's guest, SUMIKO SAULSON. SUMIKO is a Bram Stoker and Elgin-nominated poet and award-winning author of Afro-surrealist and multicultural sci-fi and horror. In addition to their fiction, SUMIKO pens The Writing While Black for the San Francisco Bay View and hosts the Soma Leather and LGBT Cultural District's Erotic Storytelling Hour. Welcome, SUMIKO.
Oh, hey, thank you for having me here. Excited to be on the show.
All right. Just a heads up to the folks at home. Just feel free to send me notes or questions you have for me or SUMIKO in the chat box during the show, and we'll get to a few at the end. All right, SUMIKO, as we always do, we'll start at the beginning. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
I was born in Los Angeles, California. I actually was born in East LA, but I grew up all over Los Angeles. I lived in Carson, which actually is its own city, but it is part of the greater Los Angeles area until I was in kindergarten. But my parents got divorced when I was 7. And then after that, I lived in Palos Verdes. I moved around a lot after that. And then when I was 12,
Too fast, too fast, too fast. We got a lot of ground to cover. Don't worry, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. All right,
okay.
all right. So talk to me a little bit about so was it just so it was you, your folks? Did you have any brothers, sisters, or was it just you?
I have one brother.
Okay, older, younger?
He's a year younger than me.
Okay, you guys close, not close?
We're pretty close. He lives up in Vallejo. He has 2 kids and one granddaughter.
Oh, okay. And what about when you were kids? Did you guys, have the usual just, brother, sis, sibling squabbles? Were you guys close? Did you hang out? Because you're around age?
Yeah, so Scott's a year and 2 weeks younger than me, so we're really close in age and we're the only kids. So um, when we were really little, it was kind of like we were twins almost, even though we were a year apart, because our birthdays are close together. So there were some years where they had our birthday together, and let me put it this way, he but when we were 5 and 6, he got to be just as tall as me, because he's like 6'2". So we were really close. And then when we went through puberty, when we started like let me put it this way, I had to go into junior high school, and he was still in grade school. So when that split happened where I went to junior high school, that's when we kind of started to be less close for a few reasons. I think that I used to hang around with him and his friends and stuff. And then one time when I was like 13, when his friends were play wrestling with me, they tried to grab my boob, and at that point I stopped hanging around.
That was it. We were done, right?
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Puberty happened. But before that, we were really close.
So you have an interesting background. So where are your parents from, and what did they do professionally?
My mom's African American. And my father, well, they both passed. My father was Ashkenazi Jewish, so they met when they were in college. So that my mom was only 19 when they got married, and she turned 20 like a month before I was born. And it's hard for people to really imagine these days. But I was born in 1968, and my mother really was a feminist, but my father really actually just wanted to be the person who was earning the sole income for the family, and kind of discouraged her from going to college and working. But she was still in college most of the time they were married, and she, got an AA and a psychology, and then started working as like a peer counselor at first, and then I think after that she was working as a counselor for like a public counselor. But before that, she, I guess, was a lifeguard. Before she got pregnant with me, she was a lifeguard at a swimming pool, and then she got pregnant, so then she couldn't really be a lifeguard. My father worked in in electronics. He was working for Lockheed when I was born. So yeah.
Okay, so when I was a kid until I was about 7, I lived in a mixed race apartment complex, and in first grade, I was the other white kid. So at that time, it was just normal for me. And then when I moved into the suburbs, everybody was white, and I remember being 7 years old, and even then thinking like, this is weird. There's like too many white people here. It was a strange thing for a white kid to think. And then over time, I kind of got used to it and I didn't think about it. But for a while, it was really odd for me. So when you were a kid, were you surrounded mostly by people of color? Were you part of a mixed race community? What was the demographics of where you were?
When we lived in Carson, it was definitely a mixed race community, and that was really intentional on the part of our parents because they thought that we would get along better. But I still actually got bullied in school despite that. But I think that when you're a little kid, the way that you view race is kind of different than adults because you don't really understand some things the way that adults do. Because I remember that, I had a friend and I used to hang out and go to her house and everything like that. And she had some like writing on her wall, and I looked at it and I was like, oh, that's Hebrew, you must be Jewish, but she was actually Korean, she wasn't Jewish.
Oh, okay. Oh, right, right.
Yeah. So, and my brother is dark skinned and my mom's dark skinned, and like my mom asked me what color I was, and I was little, and I said, oh, my brother's black like you and I'm white like my dad. And she laughed and she said, you'll find out. And then I knew that that was the wrong answer, so then I told her that maybe I was beige. So
Okay, I've never heard it said that like that before. Okay.
I
Huh.
didn't know.
Huh. Okay. So like you, I'm Jewish, and it's certainly a crazy time in the world. What is your experience being, from a Jewish family? What has that been like, and how are your feelings about things right now?
Well, when I was a little kid, my parents made an agreement not to make me and my brother make any decisions about religion until, we were like 13.
Mm,
Um, so we were going to be raised as atheists, basically, because my father was a Jewish atheist, and my grandma, um, she was practicing Judaism. So the only time we had like exposure to it was when we went to my grandma's house, honestly.
mm,
Um, but even with people that are Jewish atheists, a lot of times there's a lot of cultural experiences um related to being Jewish. So, when the internet started to be a thing, or even like the pre-internet, when it was just like AOL and different chats that you would, you know, dial up to into, when I'd be talking to people, a lot of people, especially people who were women who were Jewish, would know I was Jewish from the way I was socialized, um, from things that I would say and I would do. Um,
huh.
and I think, like, for example, my grandma used a lot of Yiddish phrases. Yeah. And, you know, so I feel like there was still a cultural experience of being Jewish. However, when I was 13, and my father wanted to see if I could get a bat mitzvah, they said that since my mother wasn't Jewish, that I would have to convert. Um, and he got angry and frustrated and said, "That's it. From now on, you're just black." And, I think that the way people think about being biracial is weird because actually I am black, you know, I'm a biracial black person, but I am also Jewish. So, you can't really erase that. My father's mother, she, her father was from Poland. So she lost a bunch of relatives who were in Auschwitz, because he had first cousins and she had first cousins and aunts and uncles who died there. And her mother had to leave Russia during, the Bolshevik revolution, and they were Jewish people were getting moved there. So, those things are still a part of your cultural heritage and your history, and they don't get erased. I feel like as far as what's going on in the world now, honestly, there's a few things that I have to say about that. I think that before I was born, back around when my mom was born, when they decided to establish Israel, that the whole idea of shipping Jewish people out of Europe back to the homeland was really an idea that came from Nazi Germany, and it came in the same like kind of really nasty spirit as people trying to send Black folks back to Africa, which they did that with Black people too. They sent a bunch of African people, or people who had been, African American people who had been freed from slavery, people from our bloodline, to Liberia in Africa. And the problem was there were people already living there. And the same thing with Israel. There were already people living there. It was a British colony. So I feel like the way that colonialism works in these types of situations is, if you're someone like me who's African American, who has been a part of a colonialist culture, and now you are, mixed with the same people who colonized this land, and you're a part of this land, even though you have relatives that were brought here in slavery, you can really kind of be weaponized by them. So I feel like it's a very actually super nuanced and actually super tragic situation all around. And, I feel like it's hard to talk about. It's painful to talk about, especially if you're, if you're Palestinian, if you are a person. I mean, I'm dating someone who's Palestinian now, and we had a conversation while we were having dinner, and both of us are just like, this is something that every single person wants you to talk about because of your heritage, and the conversations are not always easy or straightforward. And also there's almost an expectation that you have to do emotional labor. And then for, me, because I am half Jewish, that's a whole different layer, because now you're dealing with the fact that, you're, colonialism is real. And although there are many, 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 many tragic things that have happened, including the terrorism, horrible, and lives have been lost all around, everything that is happening is, I feel, devastating, sad, and tragic. And I feel like sitting in my, relatively lower class home in America, making some kind of armchair commentary about it, it just feels so actually horrendous to me, because the poorest person in America is sitting here being an active colonizer on Native American lands, um, you know, uh, and, you know, we're just armchair observing something that maybe makes Americans as a whole feel like we can look at someone else's problems and maybe not look at our own problems as much as we should. Um, you know, that's some of the feelings I have. And I don't know, maybe that's not the most eloquent way to maybe put it, but yeah, I feel like a lot of people's, I feel like it's something really, really, really super horrible and tragic happening to some people across the sea. And everything that we have to say is something that we're saying from the safety of our homes.
Mm.
And, there's something ugly about that in particular.
Definitely, trying times for sure. And like you said, there's a lot of nuance there. There's no one straight line, and there's no one answer to all the variables that are going on out there. for sure. I appreciate you sharing that. One thing you did say that sort of just it got a chuckle out of me, not about this. You're talking about how words and phrases that you said that you grew up with, that you were saying as a kid, that made it clear that you were Jewish. I remember my mother used to, it happened a lot. We'd be in the car and she'd be ranting and raving and she'd say, oh, someone would cut her off or drive past. She goes, oh, you schmagegi. And I always thought, I used to laugh in my head. I was like, what is that? I just thought it was some nonsense word, some gibberish word that my mother came up with, but actually it's Yiddish, right? It means like idiot. But I didn't learn that till I was like 40. My whole life I heard this word. I was like, what is this word? No, it's an actual Yiddish word. So there you go.
Yeah, it took me until I was about 40 to figure out that my great grandmother, who we called Bub, that's short for Boobala,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
is and that her name is actually Faye. Her name is not actually
My
Bub.
my great grandmother was a tiny little woman, really kind of a tough, like you'd say, like a tough old broad, they came from the old country, from my relatives also came from Russia and Poland, and it was, very, very tough for them. And when they came over to New York and they lived in the, on the Lower East Side, and it was very difficult. And when I would come over they lived in a tenement building in Brooklyn, and this is back in the days when like the whole family would live just in one building, everyone stacked one on top of each other. I'd come over and she would say, "Eat, Tatala, eat." That's all I could remember. And all I remember is just like terrified. This little tiny woman scared, just absolutely terrified me. But anyway, all right. So you identify as part of the LGBTQ community. Was that always the case for you? I mean, I know language has changed, perceptions have changed, labels have changed over time, our understandings have changed dramatically. Was that always the case, or did it take you some time before you were comfortable with your gender identity?
Yeah, I came out a few different times. So, first of all, I am bisexual, so I'm also a member of the LGBT community as a bisexual person, not only as a non-binary person. The first time I came out as bisexual was when I was 18. And honestly, my gender is something that I've been thinking about for a much longer time, since I was a kid really, but we didn't really have the language for that. So when I was like 19, I did, start to really talk to people about thinking, well, maybe I'm trans, maybe I'm a trans like man or something like that. And, at that time you had to live like socially transition for 2 years and live 2 years as a man. Um, and before you would have surgery or hormones or anything like that. And I actually did try socially transitioning, but the only thing that happened was that sometimes I was walking around dressed like a dude, and sometimes I was walking around dressed like a chick, whatever a chick or a dude is.
Right.
Um, yeah, and people didn't understand it. They said that I was cross dressing, or else they said I was gender bending because it was like in the context of the 1980s. So it was all like whatever they thought was going on with Annie Lennox and Boy George and stuff like that. It must be that thing.
Right.
So in 2015, when I was talking about my gender and my gendered experiences and talking about how I really, preferred it when people called me sir, and I don't want people to call me ma'am and stuff like that, there were people my age that were just not understanding me at all. But then there were a bunch of people, well, except for a few, there were a few that totally understood it. And then there were some younger people that are like, this was like in 2015, 2014, and they're like, you're valid. So they told me I was valid enough times for me to finally understand that, and, really reading the articles they were linking to and stuff like that, to understand that things are different and we're in a different time, and being non-binary is something that people have a language for. So I would say that when I was younger, there really wasn't a language for it the way there is now, at least not in the cultures that I was a part of.
Right. I mean, just think about how far we've come. I mean, just you go back, what, 20 years ago when Ellen came out, it was the biggest scandal like that could ever happen. And today it wouldn't even be, it's not even a thing. Like no one even cares. Do you feel that, with whatever progress that we have made, what do you think about that progress? Do you feel it's like legit progress, or are we just scratching the surface? Like, where do you think we are as a culture?
I feel like, it's always kind of like two steps forward, one step back. I mean, overall, we're moving forward as a culture, but there's always this backlash. And I remember stuff too. I mean, I remember when I was a teenager and, they first found out that Rock Hudson was gay. And my grandmother was shocked. And we lived in Hawaii. And gosh, I forget the name of the act. Jim Neighbors was there. And like, Jim Neighbors had a husband like this whole time, like even before the marriage was legal. I remember so many people like, oh, maybe he went out with Rock Hudson. Like no, they're not the two only gay people on planet Earth. It's like this weird, like, if you're gay, all the gay people know all the other gay people. No, it doesn't work like that. But that's what people thought. And then I remember when Liberace came out, and my grandma said no one knew he was gay. And my dad looked at her and said everyone knew he was gay.
Oh, yeah, right.
And my mom talked to me about Elton John being gay when I was really young. So that was the first conversation that I had about a celebrity being gay, was when I was like 7 or 8 years old. I think 8. And my mother was talking to me about, we were listening to Tea for the Tillerman. Oh, wait, no, sorry, that's Cat Stevens, isn't it? Oh, shoot, I'm messing them up. Whatever. We were listening to the album that has Madman Across the Water on it. And my mom was talking about how he had a crush on his co-writer and wrote some songs about him, and how everyone found out that he was gay, and how she felt like his songs were really moving and stuff like that. And, that how their partnership broke up, and then after they weren't partners anymore, then the music went downhill. So that was this whole conversation where I was introduced to the concept of people being gay. So that's how I found out what gay was. Yeah, John.
Go figure, right?
Yeah.
All right. So you tried to go there a little earlier, and I stopped you because I wanted to wait, and you just said it again. So talk to me about, so you spent the first, well, actually, before we go there, so what was the LA that you grew up in? So this is what, late 60s to about 1980, thereabouts. What was the LA that you remember?
Yeah, so first of all, I do want to say I moved to Hawaii when I was 12.
Right.
So yeah, I moved out of LA when I was in 1979, when I was 11. And I don't really remember the 60s because I was born in 1968, but I remember the 70s very well. The first political memory that I have is two hippies on my block talking about the end of the Vietnam War. And I remember them high-fiving each other, and they had bell bottoms on. And I asked my dad what was going on, and he explained it. Um, I think that there's a lot that has changed in LA. Like now they actually have a subway. There was no, like, public transportation was so bad in LA. It was like it was way worse than any other city, and it's very spread out. It's a
Yeah.
big sprawl. Um, I think that so when I was a bit older, near the end of the set, well, disco was big. And I was into disco as a little kid. And I have to say this, my mom was a Scientologist. So we were down at Celebrity Center. And her friend was the publicist for Staying Alive, John Travolta.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So we met John Travolta, and he gave my brother like a piggyback ride, and like,
Oh, no way.
and yeah, exactly. So this was actually before Saturday Night Live, because he got a new publicist after he got big. But this was
Right.
on like Welcome Back Carter.
Yeah.
But then when like Staying Alive came out, they had like a movie theater down at like at the Church of Scientology, and we all went there, and it was a big party, and we watched the movie, and then they had a little disco dance after that. And then after that, he got super famous, and we didn't see him anymore.
Go figure on that one,
was it.
right?
He was too famous after that. It
Yeah,
was
right.
like yeah. So we only saw him then before he got. Yeah, that was it. That was the last time that we saw him. So that was kind of cool. And when we were lived in like Wilshire, like in that area, on a separate note, Muhammad Ali used to come driving down the street past like us when we were walking to school. He had a Rolls Royce, and it was like a convertible, and he'd see us walking. This happened like a couple times, and he'd stand up and go, "Be good kids, stay in school." And people do not let their kids walk to school in like an urban area now, like they
Right.
did then, because we were in like fifth and sixth grade, and we were walking to school. And like my mom told me that the first time she sent us like on the bus to go to school by ourselves, which was literally a city bus, she told us that she was going to let us go by ourselves. And then she was like following us secretly the
Of
whole
course, of
way.
course, of course, of
Yeah.
course.
But still, we were like in third grade,
Wow.
and I remember when they had the Hillside Strangler, I was really scared. That was when I was like 11. So that's when I started to, really be scared. And, I'm kind of glad that we moved then, because going through puberty, living in Hollywood, it was getting a little sketchy. So I'm
Oh,
glad
jeez.
that we left.
Okay.
Yeah.
So quickly, because there's a whole bunch. God, we could do this for 2 hours, but so talk to me about what it was like to go from, you got piggyback rides from John Travolta, you got Muhammad Ali driving by in his convertible, Hollywood's getting a little strange, and you go from that environment, and then you go to Hawaii. So why did that happen? And then what was that like? And what was the distinction between the two?
Well, my both of my grandmas got cancer around the same time, and I didn't really talk about it too much, but my dad had a heroin addiction, and my parents broke up when I was like 7, right? We were living with my mom in LA, but when her mom got cancer, um, my dad's mom and her mom decided that the thing that would help them would be for them to get back together. So they arranged for them to get back together, and we went to Thailand with my dad. And my mom thought that it was like a second honeymoon or something, and I just thought we were going on this fun trip. But then when we got out there, we bought this giant teddy bear, and I was so excited for it. But then they tore open the seams, and they stuffed it full of packets of heroin
Oh,
because they were smuggling. Hmm.
good Lord.
Hmm.
Holy,
Right.
wow, that's wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this was probably about 3 months before I turned 12. Um,
Did you understand then what that meant?
yes, I did.
Um,
And my dad I mean, a lot of bad things happened when I was a kid, I'm not gonna lie. But this was kind of like the most traumatic one, in a
Jesus.
way, in a lot of ways, because we lost our mother. So apparently my mom found out. So he also was like, yeah, I know it's hard to talk about it too, but um let me put it this way. My mother went wanted to went along with it because she thought she could get enough money to get medical treatment from her mother for her
Right.
mother who had stomach cancer. So she went along with this, and my father ripped her off.
Wow.
Um, and like honestly, we went back, and some associates of my father held us up at gunpoint.
Jeez.
Yes,
Oh,
while my friend was spending the night, and they like, gosh, this is very off topic, but let me put it this way. My dad ripped her off, and then my mom went back with his business partner to do another deal, and she got busted. So she was given a life sentence in Thailand. Um,
oh
and
no.
she got out after 7 years. She got a pardon from the king. but I didn't see her from the time like I was 11 till just like from just before I turned 12 to just before I turned 19. So they sent us to live with my dad and his mother in Hawaii. And I was extremely like my mental health was very poor at this point. When we first moved out there, I remember we were staying at my uncle and aunt's house before we moved in with my grandma. And it was kind of out in the country more. And I was scared because I thought that I like was hearing ghosts or something like that, but it was actually cows. They were out there mooing. It was just like terrifying. Like
Oh, don't even get me started about cows. Holy cow. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. There were scary noises, which turned out to be cows. And I was so not, I mean, I was used to like living right by the freeway and hearing cars drive by, and I couldn't sleep because I couldn't hear cars drive by. And there were
right. Yeah, no, I get that.
Cows
completely.
Making noises.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, you know what? We've covered some ground. There's probably more, but you know what? Let's shift over. Talk to me about when you first got serious about writing.
I have always wanted to be a writer. Honestly, when I was a little kid, my dad asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I said I want to be an artist, a writer, or a veterinarian. And he told me how long you had to go to school to be a veterinarian. And I was like 5. So I always have wanted to be a writer, and I actually was writing poems and selling them when I was, because I was in LA. You know, LA, you have your parents who want to get you in show business. So I actually was selling writing when I was in 3rd grade.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, you were a little entrepreneur, huh?
I most certainly was. And seriously, the money was helping us to pay rent too. We needed the money. So I had a little business and I was writing poems for people for their when they were getting married, for their like personalized invitations and stuff, and they would get their own poem that was written by a 3rd grader. And people were into it, so they would pay and then we would get them printed up, and they would, the poem would belong to whoever I wrote it for. So I don't own any of those or anything like that, but I think that I would get a job and I'd get $200 or $300 and we pay rent. It's a lot of money in the 70s.
Wow. So you were getting paid $200 in 1975.
It was 1979.
79. Okay, but I mean, still, so still 40 years ago, you were a kid in 3rd grade making $200, which for inflation, it's probably what, 4 or 5 times worth that now. Back then in 3rd grade to pay rent. At 3rd grade, poetry is helping pay the rent.
I just did math, and that's actually 5th grade. Sorry, I'm not good at math.
Okay, well, all right. We'll forgive you this one time.
Okay.
All right.
Still, it was nice. So I was a little entrepreneur.
Wow.
When I was in school, I took journalism in high school. So I was on the school paper for like 3 years, and I had a fanzine and stuff like that. And I put out 2 like little poetry chapbooks when I was in high school. And then when I moved to San Francisco, I lived in the Tenderloin, and I sold I think 3 poems for $25 to the Tenderloin Times. So that was the first time I got published in a publication like that. And I wanted to be a writer really bad, but life steps in, you do other stuff. So I got a job as a graphic designer, and that turned into a job doing computer repair and networking. And I just didn't really do anything about writing other than some songwriting for a really long time. But then when I was 42, both of my parents got cancer. My mom got cancer and I became her in-home healthcare worker, and my dad got cancer. And I was doing care work for my ailing mother, and I decided that I wanted to try to write while my parents were still going to be around to experience it. Right. So that's why I got serious about it, because I knew my parents weren't going to be around long.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So let me ask you this. So why in particular you focus more on science fiction and horror why those particular genres as opposed to anything else?
My parents were both huge fans of horror and science fiction, so I'm
Oh,
sure that's a lot of it because they're taking us to see sci-fi and horror movies when we were like really little. Like I remember seeing this movie, It's Alive,
uh-huh.
when I was like 5 or 6 years old, and me and my brother were like in the front swing on the swings, and they had like cartoons like
Oh, this is at the drive-in.
yeah, exactly. They had their
Yeah.
Woody Woodpecker cartoons and stuff like that. And then like the movie would come on and we were supposed to go back. And I remember one time I was over there swinging on the swings and the baby launched and jumped onto people's face and started eating it. So yeah, there was a lot of sci-fi and horror as we were growing up.
Well,
The
just
first
real quick, have you ever happened to did you read the drive-in books by Joe R. Lansdale?
No, I did not.
Oh, you should. It's all about it's these three books that they all kind of go in sequence about this drive-in in like the early 80s. Well, all they do is show horror movies, and this alien comet flies by and it like irradiates the whole realm, and anyone outside, if you try to leave the realm, you get like dissolved by like this mutant like cosmic radiation, and everyone is trapped inside the drive-in, and they're starting to go crazy, and like people start changing. It's really wild. You should, anyway, I'll just throw it out there. I don't mean to interrupt, so but keep going though. So you're sci-fi horror, you're watching it as a kid. what, what,
Yeah.
what were some of your favorites?
Well, the one that I thought was scariest, well, I was scared of Jaws. I
Oh
made my
yeah.
parents check and see if there was any sharks in the bathtub before I took a bath.
That's right.
Yeah. And I also was really scared of Planet of the Apes because, like, at the end where they show that it's New York City, that gave
Yep.
me nightmares. I was like, what?
Hmm.
The idea that the whole human race could get wiped out, that was pretty scary. And gosh, what was that? Oh, Phantasm. It was so gross. Ooh, that was not.
Phantasm's horrible. Oh God.
Yeah, it
Oh.
was that scared me a lot when I was a little kid. So
So,
those are some movies that were like
so
really
what? So
scary.
when you write today, your own fiction, so you've been writing, seriously for the last, 10 plus years. Um, how much of your identity, your upbringing, your heritage, how much, if at all, is your writing informed by your life experience, or is it just kind of, oh, I just come up with my crazy stories and they are what they are?
Yeah, it's super informed by my life experience. First of all, I have bipolar disorder with you know, psychotic features, and I have PTSD. And there were, one of the things that was going on when I first started writing horror stories was in science fiction stories, is that I was really telling stories that were based on horrible hallucinations and things that I had as a mentally ill person, because it was easier to fictionalize those things than it was to have any kind of conversation with someone about what really happened. And I think the same thing as far as things that happened in my childhood that were traumatic.
Yep.
I didn't want to talk about them because I
Sure.
love my parents. I still love my parents a lot. So, they were secrets not to be told. But if I was writing a dark fantasy where I was talking about some characters that happened to have some similar things happen to them, it was a way to talk about and process a whole bunch of things. So I talked about and processed being homeless. I talked about and processed different types of trauma related to wanting to have children and being unable to. I processed things about, my non-binary identity, my transmasculine identity, and lots and lots and lots and lots of stuff about my identity as an African American. But I think that mental illness is probably, if you had to draw a line or a thread about how identity plays into everything I write,
Right.
it is probably the strongest foundation.
Wow. Well, I thankfully for myself, I don't have any form of mental illness, but I have been surrounded by many, many people throughout my lifetime, and I still am by people who are affected by it, and I know it's a real struggle. So I give you an immense amount of credit for your tenacity and your and just keep it on, because sometimes that alone is a struggle. So I give you I do a lot of credit for that. Do you find that through the writing, right, as you've been able to, tell your stories through, these kind of fictional prisms, has it helped? Has it been therapeutic for you?
Yeah, everybody says that I'm a lot happier and that I'm doing a lot better. So it is actually extremely therapeutic for me.
Well, that's
Um,
great.
yeah.
Oh, I'm happy. Well, I'm happy to hear that for sure. So I want to ask you this. So you are the editor of this book, which I did buy. I do have it right here.
Okay.
Okay. So it's 100 plus Black women in horror. So just talk to me a little bit of how did this come together? Like, what was your motivation for pulling that together?
So yeah, there's a new one, 160
Oh,
plus
okay.
Black women in horror now. Just
Sorry.
putting that. No, that's okay. I love that you have that. That one came out 5 years ago. I just came out with a new one, and I got a lot of help from Kenya Masline. So how that happened is that there's Women in Horror Month started, I think, about in 2010, and so in 2013, I had started my blog. I was posting things on my blog, and like a lot of new writers, I was posting just talking about my books. Like, no one really cared. They didn't really want to read about my books because they didn't know who I was. So I was like, you know what? I have an idea. What I'll do is I'll talk about other people's writing. So I started doing interviews. I was interviewing other horror writers, and not just famous ones, like little ones that no one had ever heard of.
Right.
And I started doing a whole bunch of that. While I was doing that, I found out about something called Women in Horror Month. Women in Horror Month happened to take place in February. And I was like, it takes place in February. What would be really great is to take this and combine it with Black History Month and interview Black women who write horror. So there was
Great
a little
idea.
interview.
Well, great idea. And I'm very glad that I have this companion. It sits right on my desk, right here every day. So I appreciate that. Okay, well, that was all great, Sumiko. Thank you so much. But now it's a time on the show where we spin the wheel. On the wheel are 7 possible categories, including a few new ones I brought out for tonight's show. Wherever it lands is what you get. And the categories are zombie apocalypse, The Truth Is Out There, Dear Cthulhu, Good Fences, Good Neighbors, Quantum Leap, Desperately Dreaming Dexter, and everyone's new favorite, Kick 'em in the Junk. All right, you ready? I'm going to give it a spin. All right. All right. Round and round, wherever it lands is what you're going to get. And you got Desperately Dreaming Dexter. All right. Okay, so I like this one. All right, so our favorite serial killer, Dexter Morgan, just returned for a new season in New Blood. If in reality there was a serial killer who only targeted the worst, most violent criminals on earth, and there was no collateral damage to anyone else, even would you be okay with a guy like Dexter killing them on his table and disposing of the bodies? Dexter, as he says, taking out the trash, or is that just a line you never cross?
Well, I mean, I feel like if you were doing like a science fiction horror crossover.
No, I'm talking in real life.
Oh, in real life.
Today,
In
right
real
now.
life.
Some guy
Um,
walking out.
I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna say this. I'm pretty sure that the military probably does have some people that do that kind of thing, but I could be wrong. I feel like there's probably something like that actually going on somewhere. Would I be okay with it? I wouldn't want to personally endorse it on one hand, but on the other hand, I just actually feel like whether I'm okay with it or not doesn't matter, because in a sense, they do have professional assassins and a whole bunch of people who kill a bunch of people up. So, yeah.
Okay, so well, if you have to do it, just just don't tell me about it, and I'm okay with
Um,
it.
I mean, I didn't exactly say that. I guess what I said is
No,
that,
I was just teasing you.
yeah, that how I feel about it wouldn't change anything. I mean, I couldn't really stop that from being a thing. I do not approve of murdering people, though.
Okay. All right, fair.
Yeah.
All right, so at least we've established that part. Okay, fair enough. All right, now we're going to pick your poison. I got 3 choices for you, but I'm not going to tell you what's behind each one. I got A, B, or C.
Okay. C.
C. Oh, all right. Well, AI and you. All right.
Okay.
AI is now here and it's here to stay. What are your thoughts about AI as it starts to infiltrate the world of fiction and how you think it might impact writers going forward?
So far the AI is write really badly, and it's really easy to tell when things are written by AI. And I don't know long no, I mean, I guess theoretically in the future at some point they should be able to write well. But right now they kind of suck. Um, I think AI is probably better as a form of entertainment than anything else because, um, you know, I think that artists have been complaining about AI for a while, and I don't think that stealing people's intellectual property to create things is okay. But I do think that early in the pandemic when I was sitting at home bored, I did, have like an AI companion that I was talking to. And, when people started talking about AIs again, I like downloaded one. And honestly, talking to a little AI is fun. I mean, they're kind of cool. It's like a Tamagotchi, but more modern, So I don't know.
All
I
right.
feel like they're fun as entertainment.
Okay, fair enough. All right, that was great. But now we're going to give you some truth serum. I got 10 questions for you. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. Favorite flavor ice cream?
Rocky Road.
Okay. What's one food you will never eat ever for any reason?
I hate onions so much.
Oh, I'm right. I'm right there with you. All right. Bucket list destination anywhere in the world.
Um, I don't know. Maybe I would want to go to Ireland because we got a crest of arms or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Scariest movie you ever saw.
Oh gosh. There's so many good scary movies, it's hard to say. Um, oh, I mean, I can tell you the most horrible horror movie I saw was this French Canadian film called Martyrs. It's super like very, I mean, I don't know if scary is the word for it. It's very disturbing. It's the most disturbing one I've ever seen.
What's it called?
Martyrs.
Marchers.
It's Martyrs, Martyrs.
Oh, Martyrs. Oh,
Yes,
okay.
I don't recommend it. It involves someone got skinned alive in it, but it's
Okay. And
yeah.
I'm out. Okay, fair enough. All right. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Is immortality a superpower? Because that
Yeah.
sounds great.
All right, but forever. Okay. Do you play any musical instruments? And if not, which one if you could?
Yeah, I'm a singer-songwriter, and the voice is in fact an instrument.
Sure is. All
Yeah.
right. All right. What kind of songs do you, what's your style of music?
Me and my family had a band. It was like a gothic and ska music crossover band.
Gothic ska. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. All right. All right. Cats or dogs?
Cats.
Favorite cocktail. And if you don't drink, your favorite unwind beverage.
Somebody's been making me something called an angry ball lately, which is actually Angry Orchard with Fireball in it. And I guess it was popular in the past. It's no longer trendy, but I'm into it.
All right. You can see a live performance, sports, music, theater, whatever, any seat, any venue, any time in history. You can pick. What's your choice?
I feel like I'm related to Marian Anderson, so when I see Marian Anderson at the Metropolitan Opera House, or oh wow, if I would want to see her when she first played at the White House, they wouldn't let her in on the steps. Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. All right. So if you could get a continuation of any canceled TV show ever, what would it be?
Um, gosh, um, I guess I don't know. I guess Supernatural.
15 seasons wasn't enough?
No, it was never enough.
No, never
They
enough.
could have had another one.
Okay.
I think that I probably could have thought of something better,
That's
but I
okay.
didn't.
That's all right. Don't worry about it. All right. That was good. We're going to take some questions for the audience if we have any. All right. No one's chiming in right now. So there was a question I did want to ask that I usually like to get to that we didn't have a chance to. All right. We're going to go to our advice column. What's the best and worst writing advice you've ever been given?
The best writing advice I was ever given was write the story you want to read. We've all heard that before. Toni Morrison said it. But Anne Rice liked that particular piece of advice, so she kept repeating it. So I think that's probably the best. Gosh, what's the worst piece of writing advice that I've ever been given? Yeah, some people are really against adjectives, and so I have actually had people to try to get me not to use adjectives because they want me to write very concisely, and that's a particular writing style. It's not everyone's writing style. We don't all have to have the same writing style, so that was not good advice.
All right, fair enough. All right, folks. So I'm going to share my screen, and I've got some goodies to share, so bear with me. All right. Okay, Sumiko. So what are we looking at? Talk to me. What do we got here?
So that's Happiness and Other Diseases, where the protagonist Flynn Cahey is someone with bipolar disorder, and he's being attacked by monsters in his dreams. But unfortunately, since he's mentally ill, no one believes him. So yeah, pretty early in the story, he ends up in the mental hospital. So fun times.
Wow.
And believe it or not, it is a horror romance. So horror romance. He meets a demigod in the psych ward. So yeah.
Well, I mean, where else would you meet a demigod as a romantic interest? Okay,
Exactly.
fair enough. All right, wow, that is absolutely wild. So, folks, check that out for sure. All right, thank you, Sumiko. As for me, I'm excited to share with you my new book, Blunt Force Rising. It's the fourth novel in my ongoing series featuring hard-boiled private detective Angela Hardwick. In my mind, she's part Blade Runner, part Doctor Who, part Sarah Connor. In Blunt Force Rising, Hardwick and her partner, Eric Whistler, are providing extra security on a Galaxy cruise ship, which you can see right there. For an AI, robotics, and cybernetics conference, but that event quickly devolves into a bitter argument between the pro-Android and anti-Android community because they had recently been granted rights and not everyone was kind of okay with that. And for me, in this book, androids are a surrogate for any marginalized group who seem to engender all sorts of hate for no apparent reason. Anyway, a murder takes place on board the cruise ship, setting off a chain of events, including a violent insurrection that will test lives, it tests loyalties, and the very notion of humanity itself. I will say it's also a locked room mystery thriller. So if you're up for some close quarters mayhem and a lot of cosmic blood and gore, this one is definitely for you. Blunt Force Rising. It's on sale now, and I'll encourage you to check out the first 3 books in the series. And I just want to be clear for everyone. That's Crackling Fire, Fractured Lives, and Hot Ash. Each novel in the series is a standalone adventure. So I reintroduce the world building and the characters so you can jump in at any point and read them in any order. So you don't have to worry about that. But there is character development throughout, so your mileage may vary on where you want to begin. Blunt Force Rising, and the rest of the series, it's available on Amazon, and it's published by Crazy 8 Press. All right, and I just want to remind everyone, if you haven't already, follow me on social media and subscribe to my YouTube channel. All right, but that's going to be our show. I want to thank my guest, Sumiko, for sharing your story and what a story it is. And I want to thank to everyone who's watching at home. And if you want to see me live, I'll be selling and signing books at Pulp Adventure Con this weekend, Sunday, November 5th in Swedesboro, New Jersey. I'm your host, Russ Colchamiro. And as always, be kind, be gentle, and generous of spirit, and go read a book. And I'll see you all next week. All right, guys, take care. That was great.
Bye.
Thanks so much. Okay, bye now, everyone. Have a great week.